I've always struggled with religion. It's our way of trying to understand, document, classify what God is and what that means to us, but we're just human. We're just a piece of the bigger universal puzzle, so we can't fully comprehend it all. We've been trying to figure this out forever. How did this, the universe, get here? What is our purpose here? What happens to us when we die? Even if we somehow figure out how to explore way out further into the universe someday, I think we'll still end up scratching our heads about these same questions. Fear of these unknowns is what drives us to create religion. We say, there must be something else, because if there's not, then. A lot of us were raised as Christians because our grandparents and theirs before them were raised that way. It's our way of understanding life, so we've always passed this down to our children as a cornerstone to lean on in life. We see the Bible as a guidebook or owner's manual for life, and we want to help our children navigate life better than we did. We've been told about Christianity our whole life by our family and those around us, but why were our ancestors Christian? Why did Christianity become one of the world's biggest religions? If it's supposed to be the one true religion, then why doesn't everyone else feel the same way? I think it's helpful to zoom out and look at Christianity in the context of the time and place of Jesus. The Roman Empire started just 27 years before Jesus was born. For about 500 years before that, it was the Roman Republic, which was democratic and struggled with infighting. Civil wars started between groups with different loyalties, which brought about the transformation of the Republic into the Roman Empire led by one central emperor, Augustus. There were multiple religions in the empire, but no separation of church and state. The same men who were elected public officials often also served in high positions of their religions. Priests married, raised families, and led politically active lives. These men read the will of God, or the gods depending on their beliefs, and supervised the marking of the empire's land boundaries as a reflection of universal order, thus sanctioning Roman expansionism and foreign wars as a matter of divine destiny. About 27 years into the empire and under the second emperor, Tiberius, Jesus was born. He experienced cosmic consciousness and proclaimed he was one with God. Some people followed him, but Roman governor Pontius Pilate and Emperor Tiberius killed him because the Romans saw him as a threat to their power. They said Jesus spoke in God's name without proper authority. They asked, "By what authority do you speak?" He responded by referring to the local laws and mainly Jewish scriptures because that was the only way of expressing his feelings in a way others would understand. He said things like, "Isn't it written in your law and was the baptism of John from heaven, or of men?" That was heresy. That introduced democracy into the realm of heaven. But the Roman Empire was a new autocracy. Remember, democracy didn't work out for them. And Judaism was an autocracy as well. Jesus also told his followers to not worry about what they eat, wear, etc. He said, God will provide for you just as he does for the animals. This disrupted the economy. This heresy and threat to the Roman power structure is why the Romans killed Jesus. But they later adopted Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire. Why? Because they realized they could use the Catholic Church and its followers as a tool to control and expand their empire. After Jesus' death, Saint Peter was the first bishop/pope and the foundation of the Catholic Church. The early Christian, Catholic, Church was very loosely organized, resulting in diverse interpretations what it meant to be Christian. 50 AD, 50 years later, the apostles convened the First Church Council, the Council of Jerusalem, which was attended by a number of those who were of reputation within the Church. They started to set some of the rules about what Christianity was like, what to eat, wear, do, etc. But there was no Bible yet. 100 AD, 100 years after Jesus, or 2 to 3 generations later, the canon was closed for the Hebrew Bible at the Synod of Jamnia. The Jewish Bible included the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, but rejected the Apocrypha or hidden scriptures. Christians call the Jewish scriptures of the Hebrew Bible, and the Apocrypha, the Old Testament. Testament comes from the Greek word for covenant. So the phrase Old Testament means the Old Covenant with God, and the New Testament means New Covenant with God. But this New Covenant was still a bunch of scriptures that weren't really organized, and some of it was still being written. The Bible as we know it in the Western world wasn't published for another 282 years. 200 AD, by the end of the 2nd century, and the 15th Pope, the Catholic/Christian Church was still evolving. And parts of the Bible were still being written with various versions like Arian or semi-Arianism forms of Christianity which rejected the Father, Son, and Spirit as one. To ensure a greater consistency in their teachings, Christian communities had evolved a more structured hierarchy, with a central bishop having authority over the clergy in his city. The organization of the church began to mimic that of the Roman Empire. Bishops in politically important cities exerted greater authority over bishops in nearby cities. It worked for the Roman Empire. So it made sense to use the same format. But at this time there were still multiple religions in the Roman Empire, and priesthoods of most state religions were held by members of the elite classes. There was a lot of turnover, with emperors only lasting a few years each. But then came Constantine I. When Constantine became emperor of the Roman Empire in 312 AD, he attributed his victory to the Christian God. Many soldiers in his army were Christians, and his army was his base of power. Under his 18-year rule, and that of his sons and generals for 36 more years, new laws were crafted to codify some Christian beliefs and practices. Constantine also gave large gifts of land and money to the Catholic Church and offered tax exemptions and other special legal status to church property and personnel. Many of these gifts were funded through severe taxation of other religious communities like pagan cults. Some pagan cults were forced to disband for lack of funds. When this happened, the Catholic Church took over the cult's previous role of caring for the poor in that area and became the de facto religious leaders. These gifts and later ones combined to make the Catholic Christian Church the largest landowner in the Western Roman Empire by the 6th century, and their versions of Christianity the law of the land. But there were still regional differences. 382 AD. The Bible was published by the Council of Rome. This was 382 years after Jesus, which was about 8 to 10 generations. Why did this happen? The Council of Rome was a meeting of Catholic Church officials and theologians under the authority of Pope Damasus. This council happened because the Roman Emperor Theodosius summoned the imperial bishops of the West and East and asked for a common synod for the Eastern and Western Roman Empire. So, the Bible was formally published under the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, which was overseen by the Roman Emperor, as a way to resolve political unrest and unify the empire. Before this, as the Romans extended their dominance throughout Europe and the Mediterranean world, their policy in general was to absorb the deities and cults of other peoples rather than try to eradicate them, since they believed that preserving tradition promoted social stability. But unlike most previous religions in the Roman Empire, Christianity required its adherents to renounce all other gods, a practice adopted from Judaism. So, ultimately, Roman polytheism was brought to an end with the adoption of Christianity as the official religion of the empire, and rejection of the state religion was tantamount to treason. The Romans used Christianity as a tool to expand their empire. Since the emperor oversaw the church, and the church was the almighty authority to interpret what they published as God's word, the Romans could claim it was their divine destiny to conquer a new area. Then under Roman law, if the people there didn't dismiss their previous religion and accept Christianity, well, treason was not something taken lightly by the empire. But there are a lot of difference between the Bible used by the Roman Catholics and the King James Bible used today. As part of this continued expansion, the Church of England's earliest origins date back to the Roman Catholic Church's influence in Europe during the 2nd century. However, the Church was officially formed during the Reformation in England in the 16th century by King Henry VIII, famous for his many wives. He broke ties with the Catholic Pope in the 1530s after the Catholic Church wouldn't allow him to annul his marriage to his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, who failed to produce any male heirs. King Henry VIII commissioned the first Bible in English called the Great Bible in 1535. It was translated from the Latin Vulgate, the Latin translation of the Bible. About 30 years later Queen Elizabeth I replaced this with the Second English Version Bible called the Bishop's Bible, which she commissioned in 1568. It was created due to church officials being offended at the thought of lay people leading the church instead of bishops. It was the same old church and state power grab. In an effort to fix these issues, the Bishop's Bible was translated from the original Hebrew, Aramaic and Greek instead of the Latin Vulgate so some of the wording could be corrected. Then about 30 more years later in 1604, King James convened the Hampton Court Conference to solve disagreements between Puritans and Catholics. This resulted in the King James Bible being published in 1611 and it became the official Bible of the Church of England. As England took over so much of the globe, they used their Protestant Christianity in a similar way the Romans did. By claiming their expansion, wars, and conquests were all matters of divine destiny.
Onward, Christian soldier.
And they killed anyone who didn't agree with the good news they based their conquest on. The U.S. is one of 65 countries around the globe with an Independence Day, celebrating break from English rule, so the Church of England's influence on the world's religious beliefs is significant. So, that is why our ancestors were Christian. So, how did Jesus come to believe that he was one with God? He and God are one and the same. He is or the Son of God. According to John's Gospel, he said, I and the Father are one. He who has seen me has seen the Father. Before Abraham was, I am. I am the way, the truth, and the life. The Bible text notes that he said, I am the Son of God, but the italics words are interpretations by the translators in the King James Bible. It's not clear if Jesus ever actually said he was the Son of God. Jesus realized he was a Son of God. Son of means, of the nature of God. A divine person. A human who has a realized union with God. He had a divine mystical experience of cosmic consciousness early in life. Lots of people experience something similar through meditation, near-death experiences, strokes, hallucinogens, etc. He felt completely one with the universe, rooted in it and connected to it. In that time God and the universe were the same. There was no separation in people's mind. The universe, God, Father of mankind, these were the same concept. Jesus wanted everyone to understand this and even asked of his disciples, may be one even as you Father and I are one? This cosmic consciousness is a conviction. When you experience it, you realize that what I thought I knew about me is superficial and that I am an expression of a larger eternal force. A name that can't be named, as the Torah says. There's no boundary between what you do and what happens to you. Does breathing happen to you or do you actively choose to breathe? There is no separate you. You are part of this colossal cosmic drama. Jesus's way of expressing this was by referring to the Hebrew Scriptures since that was his frame of reference or language at that time and place. If he had been raised in a different culture or time he would have probably expressed his realizations in a different way. The Bible mentions some of the other regional religions like the Egyptians, Canaanites, Philistines, and Babylonians, but it's interesting that there's no mention of other religions outside of the region at that time like Buddhism, which started around 500 BC, Hindus in 800 BC, Chinese Taoist in 1000 BC, Nordic or Scandinavian pagans, etc. The Hindu Upanishads already documented what Jesus discovered several centuries before he was born. We are all incarnations of God, what they refer to as Brahman, or the life force. Buddha had a different way of expressing this several centuries before Jesus when he spoke about reaching the state of nirvana. He also did miraculous things, by the way. Like when he walked 7 steps right after being born, how he calmed a stampeding elephant by touching its forehead, he purified water in a well, walked on water, etc. Similar things have happened in other regions and time frames like Muhammad in Islam, the Tao in China, Krishna in India, Shinto gods in Japanese culture, the Tibetan Book of the Dead in the 8th century. All of these religions are based on individuals experiencing similar cosmic consciousness. This is not to say that the Hindu, Buddhists, Taoists, Krishnas, Muslims, or Druids have it right. Those other religions may seem interesting or appealing to Westerners because they're different and they don't carry the same baggage or feelings as Judeo, Christian, Islamic religions, but they're all mankind's attempt at explaining the unexplainable. It's one great energy, but we don't have a full understanding of it. It flows like waves. Yin and yang of the Tao. Good and evil, or sin. Sunrise and sunset. Life and death. Samsara, what Buddhists call the cyclical nature of all life, matter, existence. That's just the way the universe works. Up and down, waves and troughs. We often worry about the troughs between the waves, the dark parts, and we try to focus on the good parts and fill our life with only good parts. But life and the universe don't work that way. If we have a lot of good, we get lazy, give up and fall back into the bad. If we worry about the bad, it's harder to notice and appreciate the good. You can't see the white without the black, you can't truly appreciate the good without the bad. Jesus felt completely one with the universe. He reached nirvana. He realized he was an incarnation of God. Most people don't experience that, so we often feel like strangers to the world. That makes us hostile and we try to make the world bend to our will. We look for blame as to why we are who we are, why things happen to us, and why we're here. This blame, this anger, this fear, it's what drives us to create religions. In the end, you and I are here. Now. In the present. So we each need to take responsibility for our lives. And that starts with appreciating the present moment. When we embrace ignorance, we turn our backs on truth and close our minds to new ideas and discoveries.